Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started again. I want to thank you all who have returned back from the lunch break. This morning I mentioned that we would be addressing topics as they were listed on our agenda. But one thing that we noticed is that we were getting really meaningful and important and fruitful discussions that weren't necessarily listed on that agenda. So I won't say that I chucked the agenda, but I chucked the agenda. And so what we're going to do now is there were some people before the lunch break that identified that they still had some topics that they wanted to bring up or some matters that they would like to discuss with us. And so I'm going to offer that opportunity now. There were some specific items that were listed on the agenda. We're not necessarily going to cover them. So if there's things, those other 3 items on the agenda that we just generally didn't bring them up as topics, if you'd like to give us some comments on them, I would encourage you to go ahead and do that in writing. Submit it to us at the regulation site that's listed on the bottom of the agenda. But right now, I'm going to open it back up. And I know there were several people before we took the lunch break that raised their hand that said that they still wanted to come forward. So I'm going to offer them that opportunity to come forward now. And I see we already have one. Thank you.
Maria Grijalva.
Right, and just please remember that when you say your name, spell both names for our
M-A-R-I-A. Last name is Grijalva, G-R-I-J-A-L-V-A. And I am really grateful to be here. I think that our state is very progressive, and I think that we're going to show, or we're going to be an example for the rest of the nation, that we're a progressive state, and I think that we're going to be setting some really good precedents for other states to follow. Regarding the requirements, the document requirements, according to according to Vehicle Code 12505A1D, there is a definition of residency. Según el Código de Vehículo 12505A1D, hay una definición de residencia del estado de California. Entonces, en ese código es muy simple. Bueno, hay otro código. There's another vehicle code section, 516. En el Código de Vehículos 516 dice, un residente significa una persona quien manifiesta el intento de vivir o estar localizado en este tiempo por más de un periodo temporal o en manera tránsita. Presencia en este estado por 6 meses o más en un periodo de 12 meses da la asumación de residencia. Y luego dice, los siguientes son documentos que se pueden entregar. The main one here is other acts, occurrences, or events that indicate presence in the state is more than temporary or transient. Entonces, la clave aquí es una frase que dice, evidencia suficiente será otros actos, ocurrencias, eventos que indican presencia en el estado, que indican que su presencia en este estado es más que temporario o transitorio. And so that's what these 2 codes mean. And I think the birth certificate with the mother listed, the birth certificate of the American child with the mother listed would more than suffice to show long time that people have been here. And so anyway, so that's that regarding the vehicle code. And so ATM cards and other things like that, I think are possibly doable. I know that we have the Delatory Bilingual Act. Tenemos una ley que se llama Delatory Acta Bilingüe that requires certain requirements, and I'm not sure how that's going to come into play. But anyway, I wanted, if you could possibly, and maybe not this moment, explain the regulatory process for those that are not familiar with it, and let us know when are we going to meet again. Yo quisiera que nos explicaran un poco el procedimiento de escribir regulaciones y le estoy preguntando que cuándo vamos a vernos de nuevo para dar más información. Personally, I think a marriage certificate should suffice. For example, my marriage certificate and my husband, he is undocumented and he's been here since he was 17. that marriage certificate is more than proof that he's been here a long time. I mean, ever since it's been stamped. And so, anyway, I appreciate the opportunity, and I am so proud that we're going to have a state that is going to set precedents. Thank you.
Thank you. We already, at my introductory comments this morning, outlined what the regulatory process is and what our next steps would be. So I'm not necessarily going to repeat that here. There was a question about when we would have additional workshops. We have one that we're planning. I think it's February 13th. It's going to be in Southern California, in the Los Angeles area, at the Bell, California, at the Bell Community Center. I believe it is from 6 to 8 that evening. And we're happy with that one in that it's flexible enough that people who are working will be able to come after the workday and come and give us some comments. So thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you again for having us. Alma Lopez, ALMA, last name LOPEZ, with Unión Cívica Primero de Mayo and Sacramento Immigration Alliance. I have a quick question and also a comment. How difficult is it going to be for individuals who have already been cited, and correct me if I'm wrong, but driving without a license is still a misdemeanor? I do know, to my understanding, folks who are caught driving without a license, the DMV assigns them a driver's license number with an X number, or with an X in front of it, as I believe it's used for tracking purposes. So if that individual is caught again driving, and in the records it's stated that they have that X number, then it's essentially driving with a suspended license, which I believe it's a more serious offense. How difficult would it be for those individuals to apply to get a driver's license?
I can't speak to that right now, but what I can say is that to the extent that there's provisions in the vehicle code, one thing that we know is that we have an obligation to enforce all the provisions of the vehicle code. So I can't speak specifically right now about what procedures we're going to follow with people who have prior citations on their record, only that we'll take guidance from what the other provisions of the law require us to do.
Would you say it'd be a lot more difficult for those?
I couldn't say because I haven't thought about that.
Okay. And just to, on the comment, and just because a lot of the folks here have also expressed concerns about vehicle impoundment, I do know that there's another law, AB 353, who essentially states that folks have the opportunity to call someone with a driver's license if they are stopped at a checkpoint, and everything with their car is on point, their registration or insurance. However, I know that's not the case if they're caught in just driving in the streets. But I think it's fair to state that in regards to the extra charges that might be implemented, in 2009, and this is based on a Berkeley report done a couple years ago, from checkpoint impounds, it generated $40 million in towing fees and police fines. So I think it's fair to consider the fact that there's been a lot of revenues to the state from those vehicle impoundments. And just for sakes of stating the statistics, for every arrest for a DUI, there was approximately 60 cars seized for unlicensed drivers. So if at any point it is considered that there's going to be an extra charge, please do consider as well that there's been a lot of money already taken from these individuals. And I think this is only fair to move this forward as fast as possible, because if until next year it's going to be implemented, essentially folks who are caught driving without a license, they're going to have a lot more difficulty to apply for it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that we missed?
Rita Medina with Chirla, and I spoke earlier, RITAMEDINA. I just wanted to add a couple of points in terms of document verification and also a bit on community outreach. At Chirla, we are really, really pushing, and again, first step in community outreach, which you guys are doing, but really doing a lot of education preliminarily, so especially around fraud. We heard some folks talking about fraud earlier today, but what we also need to remember is that we need to protect a really vulnerable portion of our community from being preyed upon by notarios or people who are offering them licenses now when that's not even possible. And so in some way, and this ties into community outreach, if there can be money is dedicated and a campaign plan to link up with maybe the local community organizations or local police departments to make folks aware that these licenses are not yet available and they shouldn't be spending money or anything else towards trying to get something that's not available yet. That being said, going towards document verification, again, bringing up DACA, so Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, one of the things that, especially in LA, we saw just take off tremendously was the amount of participation between community organizations and USCIS, which is the federal branch that would look over the applications. I would really encourage you, and we would definitely be more than happy to help link you to the correct folks, to talk with them, because what we were able to do for them is that people came into our organizations like Chirla in Los Angeles with a variety of documents, and we provided services to go through all of those documents and actually put together a packet that they could then just take to USCIS, and it made it much easier for the adjudicators to look through and say, whatever the regulations were, we checked off all of the categories. And so either providing sub-grants or, like I said, really looking at that outreach money and going towards organizations who can provide that, because I think we would really, really see it impact the possible bottlenecks that you would have at the DMV, and it would also be a place for people to come with organizations that they trust and get that work done, and you know that it would be done correctly. So that's just a piece of it. And then one final thing, just to touch on just the affidavit pieces. We are very, very hopeful, as a lot of folks have said, that the bill is implemented in the spirit intended, but we hope to also see nothing separated. So we would like to see an affidavit piece, something included in the entire application. There shouldn't be a separate piece of paper that makes somebody have to bring forward information that could be harmful to them in the future. And so maybe simply just having a box that says I either do not have, or could not provide, or could provide and do have the documentation necessary. This is very, very important and a huge trust component for our community to come forward and get these licenses and be able to drive safely. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else that would like to come forward?
I don't know how to do that. My name is Ted Burnett, T-E-D-B-U-R-N-E-T-T, and I'm the statewide coordinator for SEIU Local 1000 that represents 6,419 DMV workers. I had just a statement about, I think July, the department is moving towards from written tests to electronic tests, the electronic pads. And when the department makes that change, I think it'll be important for the community groups to understand that when they come in to advise their people about taking the test, that they also let them know that some parts of it will be electronically instead of written, and that they're coming in already intimidated by the system, that it would help them to do a lot on the education of taking the test and dealing the electronic pads instead of the written test. So that's just all I had to say.
Thank you. And part of the testing and making sure that people have spent the time to study to be prepared for the testing and what the testing is like, that's all going to be part of our outreach efforts, in addition to what we're doing with respect to having these discussions about what goes into the regulations. So you think about it, just doing the regulations is only part of the process. Our public education and our outreach efforts are a greater part of the process, and we're working on a track for that as well.
I would like to make a statement also that some people had concerns about the workers, and when they come into DMV, if they will be treated with respect. Our workers are very professional, and they treat everyone the same, and they are happy with this the AB 60, and they just want to do what's best for the public. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Good afternoon. Oh,
Oh, you broke it.
Good afternoon, Ronald Coleman with the California Immigrant Policy Center, RONALD, COLEMAN. I just wanted to say a few words. We're pleased to see that the governor did propose money in the budget for implementation of the program. We do sense that there may be gaps, though. I think we have heard from community partners that it would be great if there was a new facility located in the Inland Empire. We are hearing that it's really difficult to get matters taken care of in that area already due to the population and the need to get things done. So we would just encourage a little bit more investment in where some temporary facilities may be located. And of course, this is important for the Central Coast as well and other parts of Southern California. Also wanted to mention, as many others have mentioned about the affidavit, we can't stress enough the importance of ensuring that there is protection and confidentiality of this piece. We're pleased to learn that the DMV will continue to work within their existing application, and we're pleased to see that the DMV is going to be working with the existing application. Thank you very much. And we're hoping to not isolate this population in any way. Certainly this affidavit has the potential to have very negative consequences for somebody in immigration proceedings, and essentially we definitely want to make sure it is protected as much as possible. And as we see this issue moving forward, we're hoping that we can have a situation where a person that is eligible for a social security number and is lawfully present can essentially check the same box as somebody that is ineligible for a social security number and unable to show lawful presence in the United States, and lump both of those populations together to not have undocumented community members independently checking off this box and have that evidence potentially used against them. The last piece I would say is about fees. I think we certainly are hoping that the fee is reasonable and that there aren't any unreasonable burdens and impediments to community members to get these licenses. People have been waiting for these campaigns to move forward for a long time, and at this point, we really do see that we should try to get licenses into the hands of community members for the lowest price possible. We do understand that it may cost actually more to produce everybody's licenses than what they actually cost the individual when they go to the DMV. So with that said, I think we're definitely hoping to see the DMV work within its existing budget, and potentially if the legislature is inclined to pass the governor's proposed budget on this item, that we can keep the fees as low as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello again, Flora Chantos, Flora, last name Csontos. I wanted to comment about some of the implementation process that I've been thinking through with some of our local community members, and to share something that I witnessed about a year ago in the Grass Valley DMV, just north of Placer County. It's a very small DMV, about half the size of this room. I was told by one of our community members that I work with that there was a young lady who went in there to get her deferred action license, driver's license, that she was eligible for. And she was turned away. They told her, I don't know what this is. I've never heard of this. I think you're mistaken. So she left. Luckily, she knew one of the community members I work with who asked me about this. I made an appointment and went to the DMV, spoke with the manager, asked her if this was true, that people were being turned away for deferred action. She didn't know what deferred action was, and asked me if it was part of the new Obamacare that was coming out, and I told her, no, that's different, it's for health care. I then showed her the DMV website that had the page about deferred action, and that these dreamers are eligible for it. She wasn't resistant at all after that. It was she was very cooperative after I explained it to her, but it was really discouraging to see the lack of education and training. And I realized it's a very small DMV, but being from a rural county, working for a rural county, the services are not where they need to be, and the training isn't where it needs to be. And while I was in the DMV, there was a young lady who approached me after I spoke with the manager, who said, I have several family members, and I myself am deferred action eligible. I'd like to get more information. So if I had not been there, and if the previous young lady who had been turned away, if they didn't have connections to our organization, I don't see what, if anything, would have changed. And who knows how many people were turned away before the young lady went in. I mean, it could have been several dozen, dreamers who had been turned away. I did call the DMV legal branch afterwards and asked if there was a memo sent out or something I could support to facilitate, personnel education. And they just said there wasn't much to do. The DMV is working on it. And so while I have full faith in the organization and am here to support this huge undertaking, like Assemblymember Alejo said, of really historic proportions, I really hope that we'll see this kind of implementation and staff education in all the DMVs, no matter where they are. And of course, I'm here especially to lend a voice to the rural counties who tend to be overlooked. So we urge you to focus on the parts that are further away, where people would have to drive to a DMV where there may not be bilingual staff or staff that even knows what's going on at all.
And just in response, I have to point out, we have over 170 field offices. There are over 9,000 people that work for DMV. So the implementation of any new law is going to require training. And so as we start talking about timeframes and addressing the concerns of making sure that customers get treated with dignity and respect, and that all of the employees know about it, a big component of our efforts into the future is going to be that training component. So just one thing that you have to recognize is that we have quite a few employees that will be part of our training process, but training does take time. And so the time for training is part of all of the efforts that we put forward in implementing this new law.
I hear what you're saying, and I do want to lift up that the woman was some sort of senior manager. It had been at least half a year since deferred action was implemented. I mean, if she had even turned on a radio, you'd think she would know what it was. And so I'm here to facilitate, to bring together DMV employees, anything I can do to make it faster.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi again, Rosa Akeel, Rosa R-O-S-A, Akeel A-Q-E-E-L. I definitely want to underscore the concerns shared by my colleague Flora, which also raises another point that I wanted to raise, since we're just kind of open right on the agenda, is the process for if there, in the case that there is a denial. I think that similarly, while a lot of the training kind of makes its way to every single DMV employee, that we want to make sure that folks are not discouraged to the point where they feel that if they appeal, whether it's verbally or otherwise, that there aren't going to be any kind of negative consequences or make them feel like they can't go back. So I think it's really, really important for folks to understand on both sides that this is a legal right that folks have, and that they shouldn't be dissuaded in any way, and that the process that the DMV sets up for denials also does not in any way put folks in harm's way with immigration consequences and whatnot.
Thank you.
Hope, H-O-P-E, Valdez, B-A-L-D-Z. I don't want to be rude with anybody right here. Mr. Burnett, you just say that employers for the DMV, they're very friendly and very helpful. And I had AAA insurance, and I'm thankful for that, because every time that I need my vehicle taps, I only have to go there and pay for it. But my license is going to do in just 3-4 months from now. I'm afraid, because people there, I don't know what's wrong with those people, if they're in a lot of stress, or I don't know what's the deal in there, but they mistreat people really bad. And I don't think that's fair. And my afraid here is that undocumented people is going to have more mistreat. And I'm just wish someone is there to check everything is going to be okay for them.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you very much for having us here.
My name is Alejandro Escobedo. It's Aleejandro. Last name Escobdo. I know that there are a lot of ways to prove that we live here, and for some people, it's difficult to get a birth certificate for their country, but I think you could accept that birth certificate of our children, school reports, and medical records, and I think it's not, there is no way to get forward. And there are a lot of ways to prove that we live here. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, not seeing any further speakers coming forward, I want to give you an idea of what our next steps are going to be in the excuse me. Our next steps in the regulatory process. What happens after we actually conclude conducting our workshops is we actually we get to the writing of what the regulations would be. Once we have a text of the regulations, we would send out a notice, as I mentioned to everyone, what the proposal is, and also a document that's called an initial statement of reasons, and it gives an explanation for what we have included in the regulations. And that document would also give a time frame of when we would accept written comments on the regulations with a deadline. It would be a 45-day period. At the end of that 45-day period, then we would have public hearings, and they would be specifically on what's included in the regulations. And you will all have an opportunity to participate either by submitting written comments or actually coming to our public hearings. We haven't scheduled them yet because all the timing goes on basis of when we actually write those regulations. But having signed in today and given us contact information, we will send all of that information to you. So you will know what the text would be and when we will have future public hearings on it. Of course, as we've mentioned, the statute gives us a deadline of January 1, 2015. We're doing everything possible to meet that deadline. It also gives the director an opportunity, if we're able to, at an earlier date. We've heard all of your concerns with respect to that, and we really respect it. But just keep in mind all of our process. We've talked about training. We've talked about additional locations. All of that is going into our calculation of where we will be next. So on behalf of the DMV, we really appreciate all of you coming in today and participating. I mentioned earlier we had gotten a lot of really excellent ideas. We'd like you to continue giving us those ideas. We will be participating in some more public outreach, not necessarily focused on just the regulations, but things about the whole implementation of it. And so we really appreciate your welcoming us to future events. We also, as I mentioned earlier, will take written comments at our regulations website, which is listed on the bottom of the agenda. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close for today. And again, we really appreciate your coming. Thank you.
Thank you.